Hello. Today, I want to have a rather loose conversation about creativity. There's a lot that could be said about creativity, but I specifically want to talk about 3, maybe 4 very specific things about creativity. They're these faint ideas that I have, these sort of dreamlike, specific, but also hazy ideas. So let's get into it without further ado. So, I feel as though there are 2 really good ways of letting the audience know, or letting the viewer of your art know that you know what you're doing, that what you're making is a craft. It's got purpose behind it, it's got skill behind it, it's got meaning behind it. And so, one of the ways that I feel an artist can do this, no matter the medium, could be music, could be painting, it could be poetry, sculpting, whatever it may be, is that you allow your message to permeate throughout the entirety of the art piece without it ever being explicitly stated. So, this is kind of the vibe of an art piece, the aura of an art piece, the feeling it gives off. That's kind of the territory that I'm talking about. It's about really honing in on what that is for you and your art. What vibe, what frequency do you want your art to give off? What aura do you want your art to exude? And if you're clever, if you're intentional, if you're perhaps channeling from a higher dimension or higher consciousness, then your art's aura will, in and of itself, convey a message. It will speak louder than words. See, I feel as though it's not quite expert to just explicitly say what your message is, although that does have its merit. That is, of course, a way to go about things, and a way to go about art. But I think even better is if you can keep that message submerged under the surface, so that only those with the eyes to see will be able to perceive the true message of your art. Or perhaps, maybe it isn't the entire message of your art. Maybe that level of perception of your art is only a piece of your message. So the aura or the vibe that your art gives off, that's one part of your message. And hopefully that part of the message complements the other part of the message, the more explicit part, the more obvious part. So let's give an example. The easy example that I was thinking of when I was in my car, actually, a couple moments ago, is in hip hop, when someone's delivering their verse. You could either talk explicitly about consciousness, for example, which is something I'm super interested in. Consciousness, the infinite, the universe, the mystery of it all, the mystery of the self and what lies behind it, where the self dissolves, where its boundaries are, and how loosely those boundaries can actually be defined. These are all things that, if I was going to create a hip-hop music piece, I might explicitly state all these things about consciousness. I might talk about consciousness. I might make that my main focus, the obvious part of the art. But maybe a more expert way to do things is to let that be a more subliminal layer. Maybe that's just how my flow is if I were to rap. Maybe my flow is a cosmic flow. It feels esoteric. It feels very conscious oriented. Maybe I slide in words that allude to such. Slide in concepts that allude to such, while also talking about something else. So that was just an idea that I had. And that also brings into mind another thing, which has to be its own video because there's not enough time. I try to keep these videos relatively short. But it brings to mind this idea of spheres of life and how a good life has a good balance of all the main spheres of life. And maybe this extends to art as well. That a good piece of art isn't just one message. It's more nuanced than that. There's all these varying pieces that are almost talking about a psychology of perceptions, or a domain of perceptions, a domain of perceptual space, a perceptual landscape, a psychological landscape, a mind-body-heart landscape. Perhaps. In any case, I do plan to make this video about the spheres of life because I find it very interesting. So stay tuned for that. And what I consider to be the main spheres of life are probably not what you consider to be the main spheres of life, or maybe they are. Maybe they overlap a little bit, maybe not. We'll have to see. But in the meantime, let us return to the topics at hand. So we covered this sort of background permeable membrane of communication that is almost a sublayer of the most obvious part of an art piece. And I wish that this had a name, but the best analogy that I can come up with to relate it to something that I know is the analogy of a fish swimming in water, of course, not knowing what is water. So I think that this submersible aura is very similar to the water in that analogy. And I think that if you're doing something like that with your art, you're inviting people to awaken, to pay more attention to what is going on in their reality, in their surroundings, in their all-permeable membrane that makes up the entirety of themselves. But enough said about that. The other thing I was thinking about as a expert-like way to enhance your art and your craft is to only release spurts of your absolute best work. Spurts that are surrounded by a much more simple and easy to digest form of art. So what do I mean by this? The easiest example I can give, again, is music, because I'm a very musical person. And the idea is that you train, and this comes to bring up another thought in my mind, which is the 80-20 principle, which is another thing I want to talk about, where 20% of the work provides 80% of the results that you're looking for in anything that you do, anything that you set your mind to. Only 20% of the work provides 80% of the results. So that's another thing I want to talk about. But in the meantime, for now, let me try to rein it back in, come back to my train of thought here. Why did I mention the 80-20 principle? Right. Because if you think of the reverse, 80% of the work then is where 20%, the last 20% of the results comes from. So this is that idea that you can get advanced pretty quickly in any skill, in any aspect of life. You can get to the intermediate level, pretty quickly. 20% of the work gets you 80% of the way there. But if you want that last 20% to really climb to be the best of the best, right? You're no longer just dabbling in this thing. You are a forerunner in whatever this thing is, you know, in this skill, in this art, in this job, whatever. That's where 80% of your effort is going, is just getting that last 20%. So I think a really classy way to almost show off all this hard work in your art specifically is to only show the best of your work, your craft, in small spurts. Think of them as like little pocket spurts. It's like pocket universes almost. It's like there's like this behemoth of an iceberg, right? If you guys know the sort of the tip of the iceberg analogy, where you see the tip of an iceberg, where does that saying come from? That's just the tip of the iceberg, right? It's the idea that an iceberg, you know, you see the water and then you see like a little thing on top. And maybe for you, it's like, you know, like 20 feet wide and like, you know, like 15 feet tall or something, like this thing. And you're a little like boat here. That's just the tip of the iceberg, baby, because like just that thing, right? Then you look, if you could see under the surface, like it's like this huge thing under there, right? So in this way, you can do the same thing in your art, where it's like these little like these like whatever it is, like arpeggio flares or something, or like the best of the best of what you have to share. You only like do like a little bit, like as accents. It's like those, like, you know, those like British like shoulder things that like the generals wear that have like the tassels that hang off of them. That's how I think of like this way of doing art. It's like these are just accents. Like they're just accenting the simple part that's well crafted, mind you, but then you hear these little accents. It's like, whoa, like this is high quality. You know what I'm saying? Because what you're basically communicating to the audience is, it's like, I'm holding myself back. You know, if you really wanted to hear like what I can do, like I could make such advanced pieces of music, or in general pieces of art, but I'm just giving you a little taste, just the tip of the iceberg, just the tip of the iceberg. And yeah, I like that. I think that's something that is really attractive if an art piece has that quality to it. You know, you're just hearing a tune, it's just like dun, 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 or something, you know. It's just like a simple little ditty, well crafted, like I said, but you're just like dun, 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 and then it's like like something like that. That comes frightfully short of what I'm trying to communicate, but at least you kind of get a feel for what I'm trying to say. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. And then there was another thing I was gonna say. I'll mention it very quickly. So it's about interpretation of art, and in general, just interpretation, which kind of also blends in. It's like a twin of semantics, but maybe a little bit different. But the idea is that, art can appear to have an entirely different aura to it if it's interpreted differently than was meant, than was intended. So, misinterpretation. So the specific example I'm thinking of is there's this song that I used to listen to, not a lot, but a friend of mine listened to it. And it went like this. It was like, 3 nights at the motel on the street light in the city phone. Want what you want. And you can call friends, you call me up. Something like that. And the first line that's like, 3 nights at the motel on the street light in the I interpreted that to be like 3 knights in shining armor, like, lords and lady knights, those kind of knights. So 3 knights in shining armor in a full metal armor suit are just standing under a street light before a motel, like in front of a motel. So it was like this like atmospheric, dimly lit night. I did imagine it to be nighttime, but it's like this atmospheric, dimly lit night, and there's these 3 knights just standing under a dimly lit light in front of a motel, just like looking up at it. That's what I imagined for the song. And it gave an entirely different vibe than what was intended, of course. Like, I was thinking, like, whoa, there's, like, this, like, new age feel to this song, like, this, like, teenager energy almost. But then you have these knights, like, this medieval vibe, and they're, like, I don't know, like, they've, like, time traveled to the present moment, and they're in front of a motel for some reason. Like, it was like, whoa, I was like, whoa, this song's woke. Of course, it's not knights as in knights in shining armor, it's knights as in, nighttime. Yeah. So, misinterpretation can lead to wildly different results. I think that's all I have to share for now. Om. Peace. Shanti, shanti, shanti.